I don't mean to toot my own horn or anything like that, but this Dragon Ball Super God of Destruction Vegeta saga, what if that we've been cooking up, guys, this thing has been going crazy. The story so far has shown us the birth of Omni Goku, the threat of ancient warriors from one of the two ultimate universes, the interference of Broly, Platinum Frieza's existential crisis, Piccolo and Gohan's journey to New Namek and trying to discover what is going on here, and last but not least, the arrival of the Grand Priest, as well as the two Zeno to Universe 7. In the face of all of this madness, there is but one individual who appears to be keeping the multiverse from collapsing. He is the new God of Destruction of Universe 7, and the mortal who has fully realized the absolute peak of his own abilities. That's right, we're talking about Omega Vegeta. And so with the start of the previous part, Chapter 8, we finally entered the final phase of this long-running saga. If you haven't checked out the previous parts of this series, I highly recommend looking into the playlist, which will be up on the screen and down below in the description box. As for what happens next, Piccolo and Gohan have suddenly appeared at the scene, and in conjunction, the Grand Priest and the Zeno duo have appeared as well. Without giving the time for proper greetings, Omni Goku instinctively attacks their new guest. He's fortunately stopped by Gohan before they reach the point of no return though. And miraculously, Gohan's hefty little interference here somehow manages to wake up Goku, who had long been lying dormant inside his own body. So what exactly happened here? What was going on with Goku's body? How was he cursed with this power in the first place? Well, to answer all of this, let's go back in time a little and see what has actually been happening all of this time. Goku has just ingested the raging Omni Ki and formally became Omni Goku. Though inside Omni Goku's consciousness, he himself lies dormant, fundamentally incapable of having any influence over his body. It's a void. There's nothing. He can't see anything. He can't hear anything. He has no idea what's been going on outside all this time. This polarity was created because the power of the Omni King, which now resides in him, was never supposed to be compatible with his body in the first place. The one who was supposed to take the throne as the new Omni King was in fact Majin Buu, and for that reason the power was supposedly compatible with his life energy, not Goku's. But it wasn't that simple though. Both Oob and Good Buu shared similar life force compositions, and since the traces of this life force were present in more than one body, the Omni Ki itself was intended to be flexible. And yet, when it emerged, the two contemporaries were already engaging in an insanely heated duel. The Omni Ki was forcibly triggered, which resulted in it exhibiting violence. This sudden collage ended with Oob's body becoming the vassal for the Omni Ki, but that's when someone foiled the plans of the entire multiverse. As we know, that happened to be Goku. He was actually able to absorb the raging Ki and subsequently ended up in a state of endless trance. Zenith was wrong. The power wasn't maturing in Goku's body. No, in fact, it was never meant to be compatible with him. It was simply running amok while borrowing Goku's body. However, for the Omni Ki that still hasn't matured yet, it wasn't able to overcome the instinctual nature of Goku's body, and so couldn't help but seek out battles with Vegeta, Zenith, Broly, and now the Grand Priest. If things were to continue this way, Goku was never going to regain consciousness. He was forever going to be stuck in that state of endless slumber without any thoughts, will, or existence whatsoever. But what brought him out of that state? No, it wasn't Gohan, it wasn't Broly either. Rather, it was something Omega Vegeta did without even realizing. In his desperate attempt to somehow rival the Omni Ki, Vegeta attained a peculiar ability. The power to bypass dimensions. Of course, Vegeta still had no idea how this ability worked, but despite that, he managed to do something that shouldn't have been possible, and created a breach in the void that Goku was currently lying dormant in. But it still wasn't enough. It's all for naught unless Goku himself manages to find the way out. That breach was simply a gateway. Broly, however, did well in alarming Goku's state of existence, and the breach provided enough leeway for Goku to realize that he does in fact still exist. But finding the small breach in an endlessly dark realm with lingering life energy was like walking a million miles with no direction. It was unreasonable, simply impossible to expect Goku to somehow make it out of this void. This was now his fate, his curse for impeding the whim of the multiverse. Broly's screams served as his only direction, but they were way too inconsistent for Goku's fleeting consciousness to pinpoint a singular direction. However, Gohan's words would resolve that. They served as the compass, the map even, and Goku managed to sense the right direction. And just like that, he knew the specific direction he needed to walk towards in this darkness. But the flow of time was different here. Each minute that passed in this void was akin to several thousand lifetimes in the known Universe 7. Goku would simply walk. Before long, 100 years had passed, and yet he had only covered a fraction of the entire distance. Strangely enough, his fleeting consciousness turned out to be the boon in this situation. It's because he didn't have enough mental capacity that his lingering existence could focus on the singular way forward. Just like that, he kept moving forward. After a good 10,000 years of walking, Goku could finally see that breach. It was here that his lingering existence finally started regaining its consciousness. Even though it was the final push, just one more sprint. In this instance, his consciousness became aware once again. Goku was hit with an insurmountable level of psychological pain. Despite feeling anything, he had to keep moving forward, and now his mental state was going to pay that price. Unfortunately, Goku tries to scream, but he just didn't have the energy. The psychological pain became unbearable, and so, in an attempt to relieve him of the suffering, his body tries to relieve his soul of this turmoil. This was only a natural occurrence, however, as Goku had already exhausted the last of his life's fumes about 1,000 years ago. His consciousness just didn't realize it at the time. Obviously, the man himself wasn't unaware of how his soul was literally trying to leave his body. He also knew how dire those consequences would be. If he were to pass away in this void, Goku's soul would continue to wander around here for all eternity. The only way to escape this is for his life force to go back through the breach. And yet there was nothing he could do. He tries to scream but fails. He tries to walk but cripples himself. He tries to see, but the light before him begins to fade away. And it was at this very moment that Goku truly understood what it meant to be alone in the realm of void. Or so he thought. In truth, there was one individual. Goku's endless march had caught his attention. For the longest time, this man had also been in a deep slumber until a wandering Omni Ki somehow stumbled upon his place and even ended up erasing his favorite pajamas. Of course, this also served as the disruption that woke him up from this slumber. Wait, how did somebody sneak this deep into this realm? I was having a peaceful sleep back here, the enigmatic man explains. He was more so along the lines of being confused rather than being annoyed, because it should be somewhat outside of the realm of possibilities for anyone to just casually stumble upon his threshold. Anyways, this man tried to look into the disruption and somehow noticed Goku struggling in a void. This interested him, and so he kept watching. Seeing Goku just continue his march but then breaking apart after finally regaining enough consciousness was enough to move this man. It was inspiring at first, but tragic from there on out. Goku can't really move any longer. He still hasn't given up though, because if he does, his soul itself will be lost here forever. And so, the man continues to latch onto his soul. That's all he could really manage to keep his existence from completely fading away. This was when this enigmatic man decided to appear before Goku. "Young man, what do you wish for? Speak your mind, I'll grant any wish you desire," he says to Goku. And little did Goku know that after going through such diabolical levels of psychological exhaustion, just feeling someone else's presence was going to feel so warm to him. He has no recollection of what he actually asked, but the enigmatic man responded to his request and prepared a gigantic table full of all sorts of different meals with meat of the highest order. Y'all know how Goku gets down. If anyone else were to see this sight, they would probably laugh, but this is Goku. In the middle of such endless darkness, There would be a singular table full of all sorts of meals and just a tiny speck of light making its existence apparent. Goku's body that had long since given up finally shifted its attention towards something else. All that food. This allowed him to muster enough strength to get up and sit on that table. From there on out, it was just an ape devouring everything there was. While ordinarily Goku might have laughed and smiled while eating such a high-tier feast, here he couldn't help but let out pure tears and emotions. The enigmatic man had already left, and over the next few years, Goku just continued eating. But this was yet another psychological trap of the void. Unless or until he becomes satisfied with filling his belly, the food on the table will never end. But Goku knew that, and he was subsequently visualizing his energy being restored, and after the 7th continuous year of consistently eating, he realizes that he's had enough. The food on the table also finally disappears. Ah, that was delicious. It still wasn't as good as Chi-Chi's cooking though, says Goku. And after making such a recovery, Goku continues sprinting towards that tiny speck of light. Meanwhile, in the outside reality, not even a minute has passed yet. While for Goku, it's been over 12,000 years since he's heard Gohan's voice. Time hardly mattered anyway. He knew that the moment he's out, all of this pain he had to go through will become insignificant. And just like that, as he continued sprinting, Goku finally bypassed the breach and regained control over his body. His first words after getting out and seeing all these folks in front of him were just, what the heck is going on here? Ha, so you're finally back, Kakarot. The first one to comment was, of course, Vegeta. Dad, something crucial has happened to you. I'm afraid if we don't handle this carefully, the Grand Priest and the Omni King might turn out to be our enemies this time, Gohan tries to explain to him. But Goku silently pats Gohan's shoulder and says, don't worry, son. I won't be defeated ever again. Following this, Goku witnesses the stern look on Vegeta's face. He knew something had to be done. They had already reached the point of no return. So I take it you finally matured as the new Omni King, Goku, says the Grand Priest. You call that maturing? Goku silently replies. Indeed, none were aware of what had actually happened to Goku. Everyone simply thought that he had been chosen as the new Omni King now. But that wasn't the case. And because it wasn't, Goku had to go through diabolical, downright inconceivable levels of suffering. All of this prompted Goku to make one big statement. I've been meaning to try and fight you for a while now. Oh, Grand Priest. Looks like here's my cue. Oh, are you sure about this? If we can resolve this peacefully, I could even end up serving you, you know, says the Grand Priest. His words were indeed sincere because, by accident or not, Goku was the new Omni King and the one who was supposed to take the reins now. Shut up, I'm not your puppet, says Goku while getting into his fighting stance. That's right, he was fully intent on fighting the Grand Priest here. Perhaps this was the only way for him to let out some steam now. He had also already noticed how there were some other insanely strong individuals here as well. Then there's Vegeta's heightened state like none other. He had a lot of fighting to look forward to. Meanwhile, Zenith and the others were remaining on standby. What should we do now, boss? Amarok asks. Let's just watch for now, Zenith replies. I don't know how. This Grand Priest just got here so fast. Vegeta was honestly already bearing some ill will for the way the Grand Priest interrupted, so he was wondering if he should interfere or not. Piccolo and Gohan also couldn't do anything but watch as Goku dashed straight in front of the Grand Priest and landed a massive blow. It wasn't the blow itself that was massive though, rather the weight in the afterimage. The Grand Priest, on the other hand, nonchalantly stops it with his arm. Except he didn't. Despite completely stopping the blow, the impact recoil blew him away. What? Says the Grand Priest. After what Goku had just gone through, anyone else might have found themselves eternally traumatized. But this man used that experience to muster up an even greater level of strength. He had just landed a solid blow on the Grand Priest. Goku lets out an immediate laugh and then once again looks at the Grand Priest straight in the eye. Well then, time to get serious. In fact, that went for both of them. The Grand Priest was indeed quite strong. He had been serving by the side of the Omni Kings ever since the first one and had grown meticulously strong over all of those eras. And yet, Goku's blows still managed to have an effect on him. When the Grand Priest arrived here with the Zeno duo, he was planning on resolving this without much conflict. However, Goku's unwavering desire to seek out a duel was something he couldn't ignore. They had to solve this matter with fists, which isn't too out of the ordinary for Dragon Ball. Goku dives right into the space between them and prepares to land a low kick. The Grand Priest takes a counter stance, readying himself for Goku, but as the both of them were about to exchange the first blows, Vegeta suddenly pops up in front of Goku. "Hold it, Kakarot. The fate of the universe lies on this, and I won't let you half-ass something else again," he says. "I know, Vegeta. Trust me. For now though, just back off. Unless we don't defeat him first, we won't get anywhere," Goku replies. "Then I'll be the one to do it," Vegeta states. "No, leave this one to me," Goku replies. "You keep an eye on those two. Make sure they don't go around erasing stuff." Now, normally Vegeta would have scorned thrice before taking any order from Goku, but seeing the depth of Goku's glare, he decided to see how things unfold for a while. "Hey, don't worry, Vegeta, the god of destruction. I'll be sure to make time for you after I destroy this anomaly," the Grand Priest says, making his intentions crystal clear now. But right when he finished this statement, Goku was already behind him, and just when he noticed, he was already experiencing the sheer weight of Goku's blow. The Grand Priest felt hindered for an instant, but followed Goku's blow with an equally overwhelming punch of his own. This battle was so intense that the spectators were left speechless. However, both Vegeta and Zenith were carefully analyzing where these two warriors stood relative to themselves.